God, I'm telling you, my dogs are barking today.
But man, my dogs are barking.
Well, on this episode of the My Dogs Are Barking podcast, we have quite a treat. It's episode 7 in our series where we're covering each opponent that Mississippi State is going to be taking on in the 2024 season. And this week, we're covering Texas A&M. It's going to be a great time. Austin, are you excited about this week? We get to talk about Texas A&M, a team that always is loaded with talent and now has a new head coach. How you feeling, Austin?
Yeah, man, feeling good. Like you said, episode 7. This has been a great series so far. It's been a lot of fun, and yeah, this is such. I mean, A&M, Mississippi State, they've gone back and forth the past couple years, but it's always been a good game most of the time, except for last year. But it's always usually a good game, and excited to see what Mike Elko has to bring to the table. And so glad we get to talk about A&M, Mississippi State today.
Yeah, that's exactly right, man. I forgot about that. That was a crazy game. Both coaches are let go at the end of it. Although it's arguable which team was more happy with that decision. So with that being said, we'll bring in AgJack from AgKnocks, covering the Aggies and Texas A&M. AgJack, how are you, man? How does it feel going into this brand new season with a new coach?
I'm great, Landon. Thanks for having me on and say that 5 times fast. No, man, we're excited. We're pumped. We were ready to let Jimbo go for quite a while there. We were a little scared after we beat you guys to a pulp that there's gonna be a chance that Jimbo hung on to his job. But we were all excited to see him go, and we're looking forward.
Yeah, and with that being said, you think about going into this new season. I'm curious what Texas A&M fans and alumni, what are their expectations? Like, what are they feeling going into this new season?
I think everyone's feeling hopeful. Obviously, there's a little bit of a shakeup coming. We've got Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC, which is big for us because they're old-time rivals. Obviously, we hate Texas more than anybody. So that game coming back is super fun. We're all excited about it. The timing is a little weird. Obviously, they're coming off a playoff season. We're coming off firing a coach. But at the same time, everyone kind of feels like Elko's the right type of coach for what we want to do and how we want to kind of rise from the ashes of the Jimbo era.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. So what would you say going into this season? Like you said, a lot of question marks, brand new head coach. What would you say is the strongest area for the team coming into the 2024 season?
Yeah, so Mike Elko was our defensive coordinator. I don't know if you guys knew this, under Jimbo Fisher a few years back before he took the Duke head coaching job. So whenever he was here, he was killing it. Like, our defense was rock solid every year. There were a lot of political issues at the end when Elko left, and nobody knew kind of who to blame. Looking back on it all now, it seems like Elko might have been the guy holding it all together back when the team was kind of at least putting a competitive foot forward. So, he was successful at Duke. He kind of did a lot with nothing over there. And we feel like, hey, if he's going to come over here, he's going to have a lot more resources and talent to work with. And we're thinking that defense can be really good and kind of the star of the show, just like it was back when he was with us originally.
And you think about Mike Elko obviously has been a respected defensive coordinator for a while and has had a tenacious defense at A&M beforehand, and so that makes sense to kind of lean on them going into this year. Is there any on the flip side of the coin? Is there any, and weaknesses might not be the right word, but maybe just question marks that fans and alumni are thinking, man, this is just an area that we're just not quite sure yet. What would you say that area would be?
I think it's the offensive line, to be honest with you. Offense as a whole under Jimbo really, really sputtered. Bobby Petrino was brought in as kind of a figurehead just to make the alumni happy. So he didn't really get a chance to play call that much, it seems, last year. We're excited for the refreshing new kind of offense that Colin Klein's going to bring as offensive coordinator. But at the same time, we don't know what to expect with the offensive line. We're replacing a couple guys. They struggled last year. We're coming off 3 straight seasons where our starting quarterback went down with a season-ending injury. So, it's up in the air. And we just our starting center, Bryce Foster, decided he wanted to play in the Olympics, throwing heavy rocks instead of play football, which is fine for him because he was botching snaps and losing us games left and right last year. But there's a lot of question marks on the O-line.
Yeah, and I noticed that a couple days ago, or no, pardon me, it was in December. I'm wrong, not a couple days ago, but Chase Bisontis, something like very close at a high school, was rated very close to a 5-star on the offensive line. Withdrew from the portal and is coming back to Texas A&M. Was he? I'm not super familiar. Was he a guy that got some playing time last year? Or not so much.
No, he played last year. It was just the overall, I guess, cohesiveness of the offensive line and the coach. Everyone hated the coach. I forgot his name. It's not on the top of my head, but it was just a struggle with Jimbo. It was a dinosaur offense, and I don't think he was putting anyone in the right position to play the best that they could. So again, it's just one of those things where it's new blood in the building. Like, let's see what happens when, we've got new chemistry up front and hope for the best. But I think that if anyone pointed at a reason why we could end up being terrible this year, it's going to start with the offensive line.
Mm. And before we even get to the way too far out prediction headlines, I did want to ask, there seems to be somewhat of a contrast between Elko and Jimbo Fisher. And, obviously we're letting go of Jimbo Fisher. It's in the past now. But are there any key differences that maybe someone from the outside could see when it comes to the man and the coach overall?
Yeah. So maybe not the man on the outside that can see this. Jimbo was loved. He was a great recruiter. He had the Southern draw. He would go to the living rooms of these kids and win over their families. And that was why he got the recruiting classes he did. And obviously he had the championship pedigree. He would just point to the ring on his finger, but there were always a lot of rumblings. There were some cracks in the foundation, so to speak. There wasn't a lot of discipline in the program. They brought in all of these huge 5-star studded classes, and all these guys, like, they transferred and they got in trouble. And I think that they were more focused on the pedigree of the guys rather than their character. And that came back to bite us really hard. So I think that the difference now is Elko is going to focus on grit, hard work. He's a blue collar head coach. No BS. He's going to stand in there and make sure that everyone's doing what they got to do, and he's not going to give anyone special treatment. I heard that I think the first or second day he was there were a couple guys that showed up late to a team meeting, and he just locked them out of the auditorium. So I think that a lot of things are changing, and we got rid of a bunch of bad apples and cancers, and maybe they're not going to be as talented up front, but I think the culture's going to be where we want it to be.
That's exciting. Yeah, that already seems like it's moving in the positive direction of establishing kind of the culture he's wanting. But we look at this matchup on October 19th in College Station with Mississippi State and Texas A&M. Let's fast forward. Now we're in midway through May as we're recording this, so obviously we don't know who's going to bloom in in fall camp, who's going to kind of turn into a star, or who's going to wither away on the depth chart now. But just with what we know now, if we fast forward and pretend it's October 20th, it's the day after the game, and the newspaper comes out, or we see the article later that night, how would you answer this question? Texas A&M beats Mississippi State because.
Yeah, I mean, look, if it comes down to a single game, it could be just like last year where both of our coaches get fired the next day. But if we're talking about just success straight up on the surface level, I think that the reason A&M will be successful this year is kind of twofold. Mike Elko comes in and does exactly what I'm talking about, instills that culture, gets the team working, gets the most out of his talented players. Second part of that, Connor Wegman stays healthy, and Connor Wegman plays like the all-SEC quarterback that we think he can be. The dude's got one of the highest ceilings in college football. We just haven't gotten to see him play enough yet. He went down with a broken ankle last year at the beginning of SEC play, but everyone thinks, this guy has potential to be anywhere from an all-SEC quarterback to a #1 pick in the NFL draft. So I think that our success is really going to hinge on that and just a dominant, stifling defense.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think, yeah, shows if Mike Elko can bring a just an exciting defense in there, and Connor can play like he's kind of promised to be. I think, yeah, you're definitely in for a good year. So on the flip side of that, Mississippi State beats Texas A&M the day after. What would you think the reason would be?
Well, there would be a complete meltdown in College Station, like there is every year we lose to Mississippi State. It was shocking that we beat y'all this year, honestly. But I think that we would point to, obviously, we spoke about the offensive line struggling. So I think that, and this is more realistic of an outlook for this year, the offensive line struggles, and we're in a lot of slugfests, especially in the SEC games. I think it's going to be one of those things where if we're not perfect on offense, if we have a turnover or two or whatever it may be, then we're gonna struggle. And it's a tough place to be, but I think that it's highly possible that that's the direction we're going.
And thinking about you typically during this time in May, a lot of people are thinking about their own teams and thinking about their depth chart, the people they just got in the portal. Not often are they thinking about the other teams and other teams' fan bases. So for our listeners who maybe are not as familiar with College Station and Texas A&M, kind of paint us a picture of what it's like to be a Texas A&M fan. What's it like to be in Kyle Field on a Saturday?
Have you guys been to Kyle Field on a Saturday?
I've never
have
been.
not.
Always wanted to.
Yeah. It's obviously electric. It's a little bit different than your average SEC game day. It's not LSU. We're not going to be, stringing you up and screaming tiger bait in your face. A lot of people leave College Station with the experience of, oh, wow, I can't believe how friendly those people were, even though they're an SEC opponent. And I'm not trying to toot our own horn. There's good and bad that comes with it. We've obviously got our weird culture that we kind of push forward, and everyone makes fun of us, our weird traditions, which I'm not on 100% board with all of them. But I mean, man, the tailgating's so fun. It's a great Texas football atmosphere. I usually don't go to a game until November when it's cooled down below 95 degrees. But it's absolutely electric for big games, and it's a place you got to visit if you're an SEC football fan.
And I'll mention again, I've never been, but when I was in college, both of my roommates were cheerleaders at the University of Alabama, and they mentioned that both times they went to Kyle Field, they were the kindest fans of any road team they'd ever faced, and that was even during Manziel's run. And even during that time, there were so many like kind fans, and then on top of that, the atmosphere and just how big it all was is so remarkable. So that's got to be a lot of folks' SEC bucket list is to go and travel and see Kyle Field. I am curious: is there a particular SEC stadium that you've always wanted to go to, like in Neyland, there in Tennessee, Alabama, or Florida? Anywhere in particular you've ever wanted to go?
Man, the one that stands out is an LSU night game. To be
Mm.
honest with you, I think that that's like pinnacle SEC. Like everyone's just so drunk and they're just saying the most vulgar things in the stands, and you're just experiencing that full ferociousness of SEC Southern football. That's the one that sticks out to me. But I mean, now looking forward, I want to go to the Texas versus Texas A&M game because there's going to be so much hatred, vitriol, and so much at stake.
Well, we're so thankful for AgJack from AgKnocks for joining us on this episode of the My Dogs Bargain podcast. Thank you so much for listening.